Betty got her life. She don't want me to go without her. So, well, get your gun. Yeah, I'll be right along with you. I usually miss them.
She get online and get it.
Huh?
She get online and
Now we would have heard the main office of Fort Smith. Got it.
okay.
Ain't got no tags. That boy said to write down on a piece of paper. What gonna do?
You can still fill out a tag and game the game book.
Huh?
I said you could still just use the tag out of the game book,
I can.
put your
I
information.
need to go out today and get me a book. I ain't got any new.
Okay, we're in Second Kings and chapter 2. Be the last chapter we'll deal with Elijah. So this is a pretty well known chapter in the Bible. This is when Elijah's going to be taken to heaven. Now, what I find interesting is that uh, uh, Elijah apparently knows what's going on. And so, proposition. But just reading between the lines, he seems to know what's going on, and that's why he's going to try to dissuade Elisha from coming with him. But let's just look at it. So first of all, you got your uh, different kings and prophets, and so we're dealing with Elijah and Elisha both in this one. But from here on, Elisha is going to be the main prophet, the I guess you might say the leader of the prophets. There were other prophets, obviously, and we've seen that. Many speculate that under Samuel there became a school of prophets. Had the ability to prophesy, through some type of God's, you know, divine grace to them, or and then others, they may have just been people that were devoted to the Bible and trying to tell others what to do right. But anyway, so that's where we're at. After this, we'll get into Elisha and we'll get into Jehoshaphat basically dies, and we're soon going to get into different sons of Ahab, and we'll see that doesn't go too well. Also, in this time, it looks like uh, this is about the time probably Obadiah becomes. Well, this is when they did. I actually think Obadiah was a little earlier than this, and I think we've already covered that about Obadiah. But you see, Joel's not too far away from this time period. And that's interesting. But we'll try to cover some of these other prophets when it does get time for them. You see, Amos, Hosea, and Jonah, not too far on the northern kingdom. So it is important to know and to take note of which kingdom the prophets like that uh, were speaking to. So, we see Joel is speaking to Judah, whereas Hosea and Jonah and Amos, they are speaking to the Israel, the northern kingdom. And so it has a different connotation, and sometimes even the prophecy they do is a little different. But today we're going to talk about Elijah being taken into heaven. Now, I don't think there ever was a greater prophet than Elijah as far as the miracles that were performed. And even when Ahab, well, actually it's Ahaziah, his son, was wanting Elijah to come to him and sent 50 men, and Elijah basically, you know, burned them up, and then another 50 came, burned it, and so, and then the next guy, he kind of, he was a little bit more humble, and he basically begged that he didn't kill him, and so he was just doing his job. Uh, anyway, in uh, Second Kings 2:1-3, it says, now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. We'll see where that's at. But so, like I say, I think there was some inside knowledge. God had apparently told Elijah what would be happening. Elijah said to Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel. But Elisha said, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets, now this is that school of prophets, a lot of them who were in Bethel came, and apparently they were located and based out of Bethel. By the way, anyone remember what Bethel actually means? Now, uh, it was named that uh, because remember Jacob, as he was leaving and going to Haran to, look for a wife and basically stay there until Esau calmed down. Uh, he had a dream while he was sleeping on a rock, and for a pillow, and it was the ladder. Remember, the ladder went up down to heaven, and so he said that he knows that this is a place where God is, and so El is shortened for Elohim, God. Beth means house. So literally the town means house of God. And so the prophets basically located there. Came out to Elisha and said to him, do you know that today the Lord will take away your master from over you? So apparently even these prophets, God had revealed to them that this is what's happened. And he said, yes, I know it. Keep quiet. So even Elisha had an inkling that this was going on. Elijah said to him, Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho. But he said, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were of Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, do you know today the Lord? Okay, well, this is the same thing. But anyway, we see here the map of what some things are going on. And you can see there that uh, Elisha was selected as Elijah's successor in the Abel Mahola. That's where his farm was, and he took the oxen and the yoke, and he had kind of a farewell party with his family. Other events happened, obviously, but 8 there, where Gilgal is, says that's the area where Elijah was taken into heaven in the vicinity of Bethel and Gilgal. Now, it's going to be on the other side of the Jordan. Well, how do we know that? Well, it says, then Elijah said to him, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan. But he said, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself, I will not leave you. So the two of them went on. 50 men of the sons of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them. So they knew they, could only get so close. And as they were both standing by the Jordan, Elijah took up his cloak. Now that's the outer garment that they'd wear. Took up his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water, and the water was parted to the one side and to the other. So the Jordan River was divided there, and dry land, and the two of them could go over on dry ground. So the prophets are still on one side of the Jordan River, and they crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha. Now they'd had this kind of Elisha was kind of Elijah's mentor, and they'd had this relationship of student teacher. And so Elijah says, ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. And he said, you have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so. Now, a lot of thought about this, and you hear different things, but some have said, well, Elisha wanted to be greater than Elijah. Is that what he's asking for? So, you have any idea what he's actually asking for? He wanted a double portion. Anyone have any idea what that's referring to? And what it would mean for him, because Elijah did say it's a tough thing you're asking for. You may not realize what you're in for. So what is he asking? Well, it references a thought that's in the old the law of Moses, but it also was a uh, had been a common law in most of the Mesopotamian area for centuries at this point, and so it became a tradition. But also, it's referred to in the law of Moses. And Deuteronomy 21:17 says, "But he shall acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the unloved." Now, this is talking about, even if it wasn't by, say he was by another woman. But anyway, it said, "By giving him a double portion, all that he has, for he is the first fruits of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his." So, what did the right of the firstborn entail in the double portion? Why would the firstborn be given a double portion compared to the other sons?
because when it received a double portion, had to take care of
Their parents, yeah. And so that's how they would do it, is they would get a double portion. So one of those portions was so that they could take care of their parents. Like I say, it actually is probably a better system than our Social Security today. And other thing that obviously takes place is the inheritance was given out before a parent died, and the eldest son. So when you started getting elderly, you didn't have nursing homes, you didn't have, uh, you know, life was a little bit harder, so you had to generally sustain yourself by your own toil of your hands. And as you get to a certain age, that gets tougher to do. So uh, basically, whenever the inheritance was given out, now the responsibility of the firstborn son. So the firstborn would get a double portion. Now, Elisha is not asking for twice as much. He's asking spiritual son of Elijah. In other words, to be the one that's going to be in charge, that's going to be responsible for all these other prophets, for making sure things are done and receiving this direct line we had. And so that would be a difficult thing because Elijah's life had not been necessarily easy. He was the one responsible, praying to God for the drought. And then when it ended, he had to hide for some time, fed by ravens. I doubt that the ravens, had the most opulent diet that they brought him. And so, he was threatened by Jezebel and took off running. And, a lot of things took place during Elijah's time. And it wasn't all easy. But as a result, Elisha wanted this designation. And so Elijah says, "If you see me when I leave, then you'll know your request has been answered."
that goes with the previous scripture there where Elijah would ask him to stay at a place, but he says, "No, I'm sticking with you to the."
Yeah, he wanted to. Well, and if you think about it, so he's wanting to be the spiritual son. Uh, if you knew that your father would be leaving and never coming back, would you not want to be with him until the very end? Obviously, you would. I know. I've said this many times. I really appreciate uh, the elders here in that when both my dad died and my mom died, uh, they said take whatever time you need. And indeed, I was there, last couple of weeks, and was able to talk with them during that time. And those type things you wouldn't trade for anything. They mean more than anything to you. So you could imagine Elisha is the same way. He's not. He's wanting to spend every second with Elijah, his mentor, as long as he can. And he would be basically he was like his spiritual father, and so he wanted to be with him as long as he could. And verse 13 it says, "And he took up the cloak of Elijah." Elijah wouldn't be needing it where he's going. And so that was a designation that you were the leader of the prophets. They had fallen from him, went back and stood on the bank of Jordan. Then he took the cloak of Elijah that had fallen, saying, he said, we missed something. Yeah, there we go. We missed the passage. There we go. "And as they went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire." Now, that would be an overwhelming sight. Chariots and horses of fire separated the two of them. So it went between Elijah and Elisha. And Elisha saw it and cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." He saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore it in pieces. So Elijah didn't ride on the chariots. I think a lot of times we'll see, in fact, I think even that depiction there shows him riding on the chariots. It doesn't say that's what happened, does it? How did Elijah go into heaven? Took up in a whirlwind, yeah. So he was taken up like a tornado thing that took him all the way up. So he didn't need no chariots. He didn't need no horses. That whirlwind took him all the way up to heaven. Now that's what a amazing sight. And I want to focus a little bit on Elisha said, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." Who is he directing that my father to? I'll give you a hint. It's not talking about God. So who's he saying, my father, my father? Elijah. Okay. So he's directing that to Elijah. Once again, if he saw it, what did Elijah tell him? Judgment. I see it, and you indeed are my spiritual father. I am now designated as the inheritor of what you leave behind. But yet he also understood that meant that he wouldn't see Elijah on this earth again. And so he tears his clothes and tore them in pieces because he's mourning the fact that, that he won't be with Elijah anymore. Now it's time for him to step up. And, sometimes that's a thing. Some people are not ready for that. But Elisha had, God had given Elisha enough time with. He learned the ropes. He learned how you do things and what it was to be a mighty prophet. And as a result, he was ready. But yet, this acknowledgement I find interesting. And a lot of times we don't even think about it, but it's an acknowledgement. Yes, indeed, he saw what was going on. And yes, indeed, that meant that he, or the wish that he had, because God allowed him to see this. Now, not everybody apparently could see it because they weren't that far across the river. And my guess is if some of these other prophets, were close enough to have seen it if they'd been allowed to see it. But it seems like Elisha's the one that was allowed to see it. So he's going to mourn for a little bit, but yet not long. He don't have time to mourn too long. So anyway, he took up the cloak of Elijah, and so I don't know if Elijah ever even put it back on. He may have just after they parted the thing, he may have just kept it off, and knowing that once again he wouldn't need it where he's going. And so Elisha would take the mantle and the cloak, and that would be signified. Remember, how was Elisha called to begin with? What did Elijah do? Yeah, yeah. So in other words, that was a designation of what it was to be the. That was what the main prophet would wear. And struck the water, saying, "Where is uh, the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And when he had struck the water was parted on one side and to the other, and Elisha went over. So he did the same thing, did he not? He parted. So there aren't many people that you can say parted any kind of major body of water. Jordan's not as large as the Red Sea when Moses did that, but you had, under Joshua, they basically, as soon as the Levites stepped foot, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, stepped foot, it parted. And now you have both Elijah and Elisha that have parted the Jordan River. And so he goes over. Now, what's on the other side? Well, you got all these other prophets. Now, when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho saw him opposite them, they said, "The spirit of Elijah rest on Elisha." So they acknowledged that indeed Elisha now his successor. And they came to meet him and bow the ground before him. And they said, "Behold, now there are with your servants 50 strong men." Okay. Please let them go and seek your master. It may be that the Spirit of the Lord has caught him up and cast him upon some mountain or in the valley. And he said, "You shall not sin." But when they urged him till he was ashamed, he said, "Sin." Now, why was Elisha not interested in sending anybody? Well, he knew where Elijah had went. I mean, he saw it, and they were like I say, they may not have seen it, and they're like, well, maybe he actually isn't actually gone. Maybe he's somewhere here. And so finally, Elisha relents and said, "Go ahead." And they sat there for 50 minutes, and for 3 days they sought him, but did not find him. And they came back to him while he was staying at Jericho and said to him, "Did I not say you do not go?" So yeah, he's not there. You're not going to find him there. Kind of like the angels when they look for Jesus in the empty tomb. Why seek the living among the dead? He's not there. He's gone. And hope you can see why it was so monumental, though, on the Mount of Transfiguration. So who did when Peter woke up? Who did he see on the Mount of Transfiguration? He saw, of course, Jesus and what two other figures from the Old Testament? Moses and who else? Elijah. You can see why Elijah would be included in that. There are not many people that can say, well, I never died. I just got caught up into heaven. Enoch was the other one, and then you've got Elijah. And all the mighty miracles that he did. In fact, even John the Baptist, as he's announced, and it's known that he's the messenger, the forerunner of Christ. He was compared in Scripture as one like Elijah, and so Elijah was a very influential prophet and a mighty man of God. So anyway, Elisha is now the one. Elisha is a very good successor. He didn't quite attain the heights probably of Elijah, but he wasn't really all that far behind him. It says, now the men of the city and Elisha, behold, the situation of the city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful. He said, bring me a new bowl and put salt in it. And they brought it to him. Then he went to the spring water and threw salt in it and said, thus says the Lord, I have healed this water. From now on, neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it. So the water has been healed to this day according to the word that Elisha spoke. So, like I say, no time to ease into the job. They came to him with a problem, and he said, well, here, give me some salt in a bowl, and threw it in the water and made a proclamation based on God, and indeed the water was turned from being bad water to good water. So went up from there to Bethel. Once again, house of God. That's where and as he's going on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, go up, you bald head, go up, you bald head. So don't know what Elisha looked like. Oh. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. We'll take a break.
I get another cup. Be careful, I get another cup.
No.
You bald head.
Now you might want to watch what you say now. Yeah, you might want to say now. You'll see it doesn't work out good. It doesn't work out well for those making fun of him. Okay.
Said we'll give you a month prescriptions.
Uh-huh.
And said, but you'll have to come in for an appointment. Well, I'd already had an appointment scheduled for Monday.
Well, it probably was time to renew them, so they went ahead and did that. So yeah.
It was time to renew them because I got 2 pills.
So you didn't run out before the appointment.
I called them to make sure that I didn't get run out.
Yeah. They were.
I'm gonna turn this thing off.
So I find it interesting that, first of all, well, Marvin, we'll go ahead and talk. So, don't know exactly what Elisha looked like, but what could you say distinctive about Elisha? He bald headed, yeah. So he was bald headed. Now, don't know if he was completely bald or just very balding or whatever. Don't know his age either, but he was bald headed.
Those young kids pointed that out.
Those young kids pointed that out. Now, I want to talk about this, and a lot of the English Standard here says small boys, uh, small lads, or maybe small children. New King James says young lads, I think. New American Standard says youth, some youth. And the word there, well, it doesn't have to be little kids, okay? And I think sometimes the translations make you think it's just these little kids doing that. I don't tend to think they were little kids. Now, I don't know what age they were, but that word is used of Isaac when they're wanting Isaac to get a wife, and he was like 28 years old when they first bring that up. And they give this same designation to him. Much like in the New Testament, uh, Timothy's told, he's, don't let people despise your youth. Timothy was likely in his 20s when that was said. So, don't know what the age they were. They weren't probably little bitty children, though.
But they were probably under the age of 25 because that's when the legal age under the old.
It was 30. It was 30.
I mean,
Now, for a
not
priest,
for the priest. I mean, for people in general.
well, they could go military, but it's kind of like works
Wondering-
out. 30 was the age that you was generally considered an adult. Below that, you were not. Now, on the priest, you'd start training at 25, but you really couldn't do it till you was 30. So 30 was the age when you became an adult in their eyes. And even like David was probably I'd say he's at least, it's hard to know exactly how he was, but he was probably older than maybe what we think when he fought Goliath, because as soon as he won that, he was made a general. So he may have been 18 years old, but he was considered too young to have been in the military before that. So the point is they thought of young differently. They also thought, what you didn't really you didn't make good decisions till you got a certain age. So they were younger than whatever that was. They probably weren't young. They were probably teenagers, would be my guess. If I had to say what I believe they were probably teenagers. So they weren't innocent little